Hey everybody, this is Mark Smith. I'm your host of Digital Roughnecks, and I'm here with my good friend Steve Rutkovitz. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So Steve and I know each other back. We taught a class together. We've done conferences together. Steve is the owner of Choice Cybersecurity, and actually has been in the cybersecurity business for how long, Steve?
So about 5 years in cybersecurity. Before that, I was a managed service provider. So I've been doing security since 2000.
Okay. So we even taught this class together, the MSSP Quick Start, with the whole idea of helping managed service providers add a security stack to their offering. But one of the things that Steve has done and been doing really successfully is risk assessments. And we got caught up the other day because I wanted to follow up after this whole Columbia pipeline ransomware attack, which really was a big hit on the oil and gas business. And Steve, you said something that really was actually shocking in a good way. And you said, how many assessments have you done for enterprise customers? And none of them have been hit by ransomware. What's that number now?
Yes, we've done over 100 risk assessments in the last 2 years, and we have zero attacks or zero ransomware for any of our clients that have followed our program. And the reason is what we're finding is that there are ways to prevent these cyber attacks. It's not a foolproof 100%, but what happens is these attackers are looking for what's called soft targets. So you've got to go from a soft target to more of a hard target. And there's ways to do that. So you really have to be preventive. And the only way to be super preventive is to understand your risk. And the only way to do that is to do a risk assessment. And we've developed a really comprehensive total risk assessment that really outlines a company's risk. We look very closely at the network systems and the software. We look very closely at the crown jewels. And what are the crown jewels? It's the data, right? So that's what the hackers are looking for, the data. And we have ways of scanning and really understand the data in rest and in motion that's sensitive. And the third piece of the puzzle is you have to really understand your people and user behavior, because you can put all the technology in the world, but if one of your employees clicks on phishing attack, and today there's 12 different types of phishing attacks, they could click on something. So it's really a multi-pronged approach, looking at your technology, your data, and your people and your behavior.
What does someone do to get started? I mean, risk assessment sounds good. I mean, what does that look like? How long does that take? What do you get as a result? Is it almost like getting a credit score or something like that that tells you, where you are between horrible and vulnerable and very soft to, I'm super hard and no one's breaking in? How do you get that?
Yeah, so the first thing is usually a risk assessment engagement. And what we look for, most companies aren't starting from scratch. So everybody has some type of what I call security 1.0 in place. And we always look for the good things first. So what are the good things that companies are doing that they have in place, or what security or layers of security, patching, whatever they're doing for security today, we look at that and we try to build on top of that. So we look at the good stuff in place today, and then we look for the gaps. The big gaps right now that we're seeing are around what's called vulnerabilities or software vulnerabilities. If you look at every single one of these hacks, they usually come back to a vulnerability number that are either critical or high of something that wasn't patched. The bad guys or the hackers are exploiting those holes and then getting into a system. So if you're proactive and you're providing these scans, and we know kind of before the hackers get there what those vulnerabilities are, the IT team, we can instruct them how to patch them and fix them. So even if something gets in, like a ransomware, it can't launch, right? So that's really important to work on these vulnerabilities and have a plan in place to constantly keep up with them.
And so, okay, so there's a thing to prevent that, right? And first thing to do, get the assessment, whatnot. What happens? Are there tools that come in place that could minimize the impact if somehow they did get through, like a backstop you mentioned?
Yeah, so the first thing is you get the risk assessment, you get the baseline. You have to get a baseline of where your risk is today, and it has to be total risk. You can't miss anything, because that one thing you miss could be the thing that can be exploited. Now, once you do that, then you have to put a plan in place. That's what we help companies do. We put a plan in place to build the layers of security and or configurations on top of what they're doing. So right now, if you don't have things like two-factor authentication and you don't have a good vulnerability plan in place, you don't have a good awareness training, there's certain things you have to have in place that I would call are the basics. You've got to get them in place right away. And then there's newer software that does like artificial intelligence that can look for abnormal behavior, or it can look for ransomware. It could be getting in 24/7 and getting alerts. So there's, depending on the type of business that you're in and the complexities, there's different layers of security we recommend and or configurations that you can do. So that's step two, is the implementation. A good backup is really your best defense against a ransomware if it does get in. So, if something does get in, and again, we haven't been hit, we do a great job at really preventing these from happening, but nobody's perfect. So what I say is the third thing you have to have is a backstop. And that backstop has to have two pieces. And the reason is that all the ransom right now, most of it is called double ransomware, where they're locking down your data and encrypting it. And then they're also exfiltrating it, taking it out to a website, and then saying, if you don't pay me the extortion and the money, we're going to give everyone in the world access to these files. So what a backstop would look like is you need a good backup. When we do a risk assessment, we look pretty closely at companies' backups. And I can tell you, no two companies are doing backups the same. Sometimes this ransomware can sit in a company for a number of weeks or even a months and change the file extensions and do kind of quirky things and even turn off backups. So you want to make sure that your backup is set long enough that if something were to happen and we didn't know for a couple of weeks or even a month, there's a restore point back to a month or even two to make sure that those files can come back. It's going to be painful if you got to rekey things for a month or so, but it's better than losing all your data. The second piece of your backstop is exfiltration. We have software now, or super software, that can really identify all the sensitive data. So security numbers, credit cards, date of birth, driver's license, etc. And we can encrypt it. So we actually can encrypt it proactively, and if the data gets exfiltrated, then all the hackers can see are ones and zeros in encryption. So you need a good backstop in case somebody does get through. But if you have the right layers and have the risk assessment, it's difficult for somebody to come through.
So, Steve, what would be the first step someone would do if they are interested in following up with you?
So the first step would be to reach out to me. It's Steve, Steve, at choicecybersecurity.com, or go to our website, www.choicecybersecurity.com. And just, reach out, and we'll be able to set up a one-on-one meeting. Every network and system we work with is a little bit unique and a little bit different. So it's important to understand what's important with sensitive data you have, how your systems are set up. So we'd start having an initial conversation, and we would start with an engagement on a risk assessment as usually step one. And then from there, we put together a plan of what the risk assessment would have to entail. It usually takes 60 to 90 days for a complete risk assessment. And then from there, we implement the plan and help you with your buttoning things up and adding layers of security.
Yeah.
The worst calls that I get are companies that, because what I'm known for is I used to do a lot of forensics work, and I got into prevention because I realized these things can be stopped. But there's nothing worse than getting that call when somebody gets hit. It's like a wildfire. And just the stress and difficulty it is, when a company gets hit and their data gets locked down and, it interrupts their business. So the key, I can't emphasize it enough, there's ways to prevent it and really crush your risk. And, that's really important. So if you have a company that's already done a risk assessment for you, make sure you implement those recommendations. Don't let these recommendations sit, because it's very important to be proactive and keep adding layers and, kind of monitoring, keeping up with things. And the chances of getting hit are going to be slim. You want to be the hard target, not the soft target.
Right. Well, with that, thanks again, Steve, for being part of Digital Roughnecks.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your time today.